Rachel Monroe woke at 11:17 in the morning with her head feeling as if someone had packed it full of sand, while the ceiling fan turned slowly above her, one old blade giving off a faint rasp with every rotation, a sound so ordinary she had lived with it for 3 years and almost stopped hearing it. Except that morning, it echoed through the apartment like something trying to remind her that the world would keep moving even after her life had just been hollowed out. Phoenix light slipped through the half-drawn curtains, harsh and dry and merciless, falling across the laminate floor where a thin streak of dust lay near the bedroom door. Rachel stayed still for a few seconds, her throat dry from the night shift that had dragged longer than usual after a canceled flight sent nearly 30 passengers flooding into the hotel lobby at 2 in the morning. All of them angry, all of them exhausted, all of them looking at her as if she personally controlled the weather. She remembered coming home close to 7. She remembered Caleb in the kitchen, gray t-shirt, hair slightly messy, the smell of coffee and toast inside the small apartment. He had kissed her forehead and said, "Sleep. I'll handle the house paperwork this afternoon. You don't need to open your laptop anymore." She had smiled wearily, kicked off her shoes right by the door, too tired even to hang her uniform jacket on the hook. Caleb had handed her coffee, but she had only managed 2 sips before crawling into bed. He had still been there then. His side of the bed had still held warmth. Now that side was empty, the sheets too smooth, as if the person who had slept beside her had never carried any real weight at all. Rachel sat up, pain pulsing through her skull. The apartment was unnaturally quiet, not the kind of quiet that belonged to a late morning after a night shift, when Caleb usually tried to move softly, close cabinets gently, listen to podcasts through earbuds because he was afraid of waking her. This silence was thicker, cleaner, like a room someone had drained of human presence before shutting the door. On the chair near the window, Caleb's old dark blue hoodie still hung over the back, the one he wore when he fixed her car or ran to the grocery store for milk late at night. It was draped there casually enough that, for one first suspended second, Rachel thought he had only stepped out. Maybe gone downstairs to get the mail, maybe gone to buy eggs, maybe standing in the parking lot on a phone call. But the drawer on his side of the closet was cracked open. She stood, walked toward it, and saw that his old leather wallet was gone. The cheap watch he said he had bought back when he still worked construction was gone. The little box of papers he always called just old stuff nobody needs was gone. His toothbrush had disappeared from the cup by the sink. Her laptop charger was gone too. She looked at the hoodie on the chair and understood, with a coldness that seemed to pass through her skin before reaching thought, that it had not been forgot. It had been left behind to delay the truth for a few more minutes. A soft decoy, still smelling like the man she loved, placed inside a room that had been robbed. Her phone lay face down on the nightstand. When Rachel turned it over, 3 banking alerts were waiting like 3 stones in her stomach. She opened the first one with fingers still numb from sleeping wrong. Her house savings account, the account she had named Future Kitchen in the banking app, had $12.46 left in it. At first, her eyes did not understand the number. She blinked, thought the app was glitching, thought she had opened the wrong sub-account, thought the bank was doing maintenance. She tapped again. The balance stayed the same, $12.46. The second alert said the joint account she shared with Caleb had been drained after a wire transfer at 5:02 a.m. to a business account in Nevada. The third said her credit card had a $800 cash advance taken from an ATM near the Greyhound station at 5:27. Rachel stood in the middle of the bedroom, phone in hand, and for a few seconds she did not panic. Her body did something stranger. It refused. It stood still, breathing slowly, trying to preserve the old world for one more beat because the new one was too impossible to enter. Then she called Caleb. The number was no longer in service. She called again. The same message. She opened her texts. The last message from him had been sent at 5:06 a.m. while she was sleeping like the dead after her night shift, while he had probably been standing inside this apartment, knowing the money was leaving her accounts, knowing the sound of the air conditioner, the ceiling fan, her breathing from the bedroom would be the final sounds of the life he was about to destroy. The message had only one line: "I'm sorry. Please don't try to understand this." Rachel read that sentence until the English words turned into black marks with no meaning. Don't try to understand, as if he were granting her one last mercy, one soft instruction not to dig into the hole he had left behind, as if not understanding were the only gift he had not taken from her. She sat down too quickly on the edge of the bed, her knees striking the frame with a sharp pain, and that pain almost felt merciful because it had a clear location. The pain spreading through her chest did not. It did not know where to live. It lived in the empty account, in the hoodie that still smelled like him, in the coffee cup with dried brown streaks on the kitchen table, in the note taped to the food container in the refrigerator that she had not opened yet, in the dream of a kitchen with a window looking out over a backyard, in the 8 years she had spent telling herself that one day she would no longer live the kind of life where she calculated rent before she calculated what she wanted to eat. 8 years earlier, that money had begun with $40. Rachel had been 24 then, newly hired as a night desk clerk at a hotel near the Phoenix airport, a place that always smelled faintly of old air conditioning, industrial coffee, and suitcases dragging over tile after midnight. At first, she did not call it house savings, calling it that sounded too luxurious for a girl renting a small room with a friend, driving a 2003 Toyota whose passenger door had to be slammed twice before it shut properly, with a bank account that usually sat in 3 digits before payday. She only moved $40 into a separate account after rent, electricity, gas, and the phone bill. $40 could not buy a future, but it was the first time she decided there would be one part of her life no one could touch, no emergency could take, no bad day could spend, no exhausting shift could turn into a takeout dinner. She wrote in a cheap little notebook from the discount store, "Future kitchen, $40. A future kitchen. Not a mansion, not a swimming pool, just a kitchen with real light, not the dirty yellow glow of a rented apartment, with space for a basil plant, with a window where she could stand in the morning drinking coffee like the people in magazines who seem to have stable lives." Rachel saved in ways no one films for inspiration, because they are too dull and too lonely. She ate markdown food from the grocery store at the end of the day. Slightly wilted salads, bread near expiration, buy one get one yogurt. She learned how to change her own oil from online videos, so she would not lose $60 at a garage. She picked up extra shifts on Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Eve, nights when drunk guests stood at the counter demanding Lakeview rooms even though the hotel sat beside an airport, and the only things visible from the windows were the parking lot, streetlights, and in the distance, the runway. She watched other people pull suitcases through her life on their way to vacations, business trips, honeymoons, family visits, while she stood behind the counter in a black blazer, smiling, handing over key cards, saying, "Enjoy your stay," even when her feet hurt and her eyes wanted to close. Once at 2:37 in the morning, a drunk man threw his credit card onto the desk because the room had no minibar, called her sweetheart in a filthy voice, then laughed when she still had to apologize. Afterward, Rachel went into the break room, washed her hands longer than necessary, opened her phone, and transferred $75 into Future Kitchen. As if every time the world made her smaller, she had to send proof somewhere that she was still building something no one had the right to step on. When she became night manager, her pay rose a little and her responsibilities rose far more. She handled guests who had lost passports, couples fighting in the hallway, new employees crying in the laundry room after being insulted by guests, the reservation system crashing at midnight, business travelers furious because the printer did not work before their morning meeting. She studied accounting online at the strangest hours a person can live through. 3 in the morning in the back office behind the front desk, when the lobby was empty and the coffee machine burbled. 10 in the morning after a night shift, eyes red, still watching lecture videos about reconciliations, depreciation, payroll taxes. Once she fell asleep on the table, cheek pressed to a worksheet, and woke with printer ink smudged on her skin. She laughed alone, then kept going. Every month she wrote in the notebook, "Office window, $12, $400. Down payment, $28, $900. No more landlords, $51, $300. My own name on the door, $64, $800. When the number rose to nearly $74, Rachel did not talk about it much. She was afraid speaking it aloud would make the dream easier to break. That money was not extra money. It was the meals she skipped, the shoes she did not buy, the trips she declined, the dental work she postponed even though the dentist said she should do it, the birthdays she worked because the holiday pay was better. It was time from her life stacked into numbers. Caleb Foster appeared at the hotel on a hot June night, when Phoenix was still sweltering even after midnight, and the lobby air conditioner was working so hard the floor seemed to vibrate faintly beneath. He rented a room for an extended stay, saying he was handling a small construction project in Phoenix and waiting on permits and contracts. At check-in, he did not flirt with her in the way men sometimes do, when they think a woman on the night shift will soften for a few jokes. He only observed, "You drink black coffee at 2 in the morning?" he asked after seeing her with a paper cup beside the printer. Rachel gave him the practiced front desk smile. "One of the perks of the night shift," Caleb smiled. "Not broadly. People who work nights usually get forgotten by the rest of the world. During the day, everyone assumes everything runs itself while they sleep." That made Rachel look up a little more. Not because it was romantic, because it was true in a way few people noticed. Caleb took his key card, wished her a quiet shift, and headed toward the elevator. Over the next several days, he kept appearing at the exact moments when Rachel was most tired, but not often enough to make her wary. A protein bar left on the counter with a note, "For the person keeping the airport people alive." A coffee from across the street on the night she handled a cluster of passengers delayed by weather. Once, when he saw her bending down in the parking lot to check a strange noise under her car, he did not take over in the way men sometimes do when they want to prove something. He simply asked, "Do you want me to listen? I used to fix basic stuff when I was doing construction." Rachel meant to refuse, but he stood far enough away, not pushing. He listened to the engine, said it might be the belt wearing down, and the next morning left the name of a garage on the counter, one he said did not overcharge women. When Rachel tried to pay him back for the coffee, he shook his head. "You don't owe me. I know what it feels like to calculate everything. Sometimes someone is allowed to do one small thing without turning it into an invoice." Caleb told his story slowly, layer by layer, like someone who did not want to burden other people with his wound, but revealed just enough to make the listener want to step closer. He said he had once owned a small business, renovating old houses in Nevada. There had been a partner, a man he had treated like a brother, who used his name to take out loans, drained the company funds, and disappeared, leaving Caleb with debt and shame. "I didn't lose everything because I was stupid," he said one night after Rachel finished her shift, and the two of them sat in the empty breakfast area, where the neon lights made the packaged pastries look pale and unreal. "I lost it because I trusted someone who had eaten dinner in my house, who knew what flowers my mother liked, who called me family. People always say victims should have seen the sign, but a good con artist doesn't show you the sign. They study you first." Rachel heard that and felt an invisible thread tie his story to the deepest fear in her. He did not come as a rich man wanting to save her. He came as someone who had been robbed by life, someone who understood shame, someone who understood starting over. And people who have been deceived often sound safe, because we assume they would never do that to someone else. Rachel did not know the best script always begins with the villain telling you he was once the victim. Their love did not erupt. It seeped into Rachel's life through small things, patiently enough that later she would not be able to point to the exact moment she had opened the door too wide. Caleb moved out of the hotel after 3 weeks, but he kept texting, inviting her to breakfast after her night shifts at a diner near the airport. He did not laugh at her upside-down sleep schedule. He said, "I'll meet you when everyone else is having dinner if that's breakfast for you." The first time he came to her apartment, he brought groceries and did not comment on the old sofa, the wobbly dining table, or the stacks of accounting papers piled on the floor. He made chili in her tiny, overheated kitchen, wiped down the counter afterward, and washed the pan before Rachel could stand up. He sat on the floor beside her while she studied, legs stretched beneath the coffee table, laptop on his knees, occasionally asking a question that made her laugh because he understood nothing about deferred revenue but was trying anyway. When her wrists hurt from entering practice data, he took her hand and rubbed his thumb gently over the joint. "Your discipline is terrifying," he said. "I've never seen anyone build a future one spreadsheet row at a time." Rachel laughed shyly. She was not used to being praised for the slow, practical, unglamorous part of herself. She was used to being called too careful, too frugal, too serious. Caleb made her caution sound like dignity. One evening, Rachel was sitting at the kitchen table with the future kitchen notebook open beside her laptop, when Caleb came up behind her carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. He did not ask right away. He set one glass down, glanced at the page for a few seconds as if by accident, then said very softly, "You're not just saving money. You're naming every reason you refuse to give up." Rachel looked up. "Were you reading my notebook?" He immediately stepped back half a pace, wearing just enough remorse. "I'm sorry. It was open. I wasn't trying to invade your privacy." She should have closed the notebook, but the sentence he had just said was too precise. precise in a way that made her feel seen, not inspected. "It's okay," she said, though something inside her stirred uneasily. Caleb pointed to an old line that read office window. "The office window matters to you?" "Yeah," Rachel gave a small laugh. "Does that sound stupid?" "No. It sounds like someone who has worked under fake light too long and wants real light." That touched a place in her she had never put into words. He did not ask for a password. He did not ask for a balance. He simply learned her financial language by calling each number an emotion. Later, Rachel would understand that moment had not only been romantic. It was the first time he proved he could read her notebook like a map. He did not ask for money. That was the most important thing. He paid his share when they went out. Once, when Rachel offered to pay because he had fixed her car, he seemed almost wounded. "I don't want you thinking I came into your life to take something you worked so hard to have," he said. "If something of yours is sacred, I want it to stay sacred." That sentence went straight to the place where she kept the future kitchen notebook. Months later, she told him about her savings. Not the whole amount at first, just that she was almost ready for a down payment on a small house. Caleb did not widen his eyes at the number. He did not call her smart in a greedy way. He went quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm proud of you." Rachel felt her eyes grow hot. No one had ever said that about her money before. People usually said she was lucky she did not have children, lucky she was still young, lucky she could work so many shifts, lucky she knew how to save. Caleb said proud. He looked at listings with her in the evenings before she went to work. Houses in Mesa, Glendale, Chandler, small homes with old kitchens, dry backyards, beige walls, ugly garage doors. But to Rachel, each one was a possibility. Caleb did not only look at prices. He talked about where her accounting desk would go, the plant by the door, how he would repaint the kitchen cabinets if she wanted. He placed himself inside that future gently, not claiming space, just like someone helping hang curtains. Rachel did not realize the first hook was not the joint account. The first hook was that she began imagining Caleb inside the house she had starved herself for years to buy. Maya Torres met Caleb at a Friday dinner at the small Mexican restaurant Rachel loved, and it took her 40 minutes to feel uneasy. Maya had been Rachel's best friend since they had worked together at a diner after high school. She was now a social worker, used to looking at stories from adults that sounded too perfect and searching for the crack. Caleb was polite, warm, asked Maya about her work, listened closely, said exactly the things a social worker would want to hear about systems abandoning poor people. He praised Rachel in front of Maya, but not too much. When Maya asked about his old business, he told the story of being betrayed by his partner in a low, pained voice, but slid past the company name, the partner's name, the legal records, using phrases like "a really bad time." "I don't want to bring that energy into Rachel's life, and I'm learning not to let the past define me." Maya nodded and did not push, but after dinner, when Caleb went to the restroom, she leaned across the table. "Have you met anyone from his life?" Rachel frowned. "What do you mean? Friends, family, coworkers, someone who can confirm his story? He's ashamed of what happened. He's not close to his family." "Rachel," Maya placed a hand on the table. "People who have no one are sometimes real, but sometimes that's how they make sure you can't check them." Rachel felt irritated immediately, because somewhere deep down she had noticed too and did not want to look. "You're just not used to seeing me being taken care of." Maya exhaled. "I want you taken care of, but someone taking care of you shouldn't make his entire past turn into fog." That night, Rachel told Caleb part of it. He did not get angry. If he had, maybe she would have been more cautious. He only looked sad, gentle, like a man who understood he was an outsider in her life. "Maya is protecting you. I respect that," he said while washing dishes in her kitchen. "Your family, your friends, they don't trust me yet because they're afraid of losing you. I don't blame them. If I were them, I'd probably see me as a risk too." Rachel stood behind him and saw his shoulders sink slightly. "I don't think you're a risk." He turned, smiling tiredly. "I just want to become the person who helps you feel like you don't have to stay on guard all the time." And because he did not attack Maya, because he did not demand that Rachel choose sides, he won. He turned the warning into proof that he was kind enough to endure suspicion. The joint account was opened on a February morning, 8 months into their relationship, inside a bank branch so cool Rachel had to pull her sleeves down over her wrists. Caleb had suggested it very carefully beforehand, not demanding that she move all her money, not speaking like a man who needed access. "I think we should have a small joint account for house costs," he said in her apartment, Sitting beside the table where the future kitchen notebook lay open with numbers she had never fully shown anyone before Caleb. Inspection fees, paperwork fees, initial repairs. Not your main savings. I don't want to touch that. It's just that if we're working with a realtor and lender, things look more serious if we have a joint account. Rachel hesitated. Caleb did not push. He moved $500 from his own account first and showed her, saying, I want to put something in before you do so you know I'm not coming empty-handed. Later, when everything was pulled apart, Rachel would wonder whether that money had ever really been his, or if it came from someone else, or if it had only been borrowed long. To buy trust, that day inside the bank, when the young employee smiled and congratulated them on getting ready to buy your first home. When Caleb held her hand under the desk, his thumb moving softly over the back of her hand, when the bank pen slid across the linked account forms, Rachel felt something she had not known she craved so badly. Not only being loved, but walking with someone into an ordinary adult process. Signing together, planning together, being congratulated together. Hearing the employee ask what they wanted to name the account, and Caleb looking at her, saying, Future Kitchen. Rachel laughed, embarrassed and happy. She did not see Caleb's smile flicker in the window glass of the teller desk. A smile not quite tender, but more like a man watching the first lock turn into place. The trial transactions began after that, almost harmless. $300 for home inspection scheduling. Caleb sent her a PDF with the logo of an inspection company in Scottsdale. $480 for credit review and lender prep. A confirmation email came from an address that looked very professional. $200 for escrow hold consultation. A phrase Rachel disliked because it sounded vague. But Caleb explained it as a reservation fee with a secondary realtor that would let them see a few houses before they went public. He always had documents, always had receipts, always had a story attached, and most importantly, he always did it when Rachel was at her most exhausted. After a night shift, when she had just come home and could barely keep her eyes open. Before her online class, when her head was full of coursework. In the middle of a staffing shortage at the hotel, when she had to swap shift. I'll handle the paperwork so it's less weight on you, he said. You've controlled everything alone for too long. Can you let me carry one corner? That sentence became the key. If she asked too many questions, she was afraid she did not know how to trust. If she did not ask, she felt lighter. Caleb never called her paranoid. He called her tired. He did not say she was wrong to check. He said she deserved to rest. The most refined manipulation does not turn caution into madness immediately. It turns caution into an inability to receive care. And for someone who has had to handle life alone for too long, that accusation hurts more than most. Nina Monroe, Rachel's younger sister, distrusted Caleb earlier than Rachel wanted to admit. Nina was a single mother to a 5-year-old boy and had borrowed money from Rachel more than once when medical bills or childcare costs piled up. The sisters loved each other, but their bond had sharp edges. Rachel often helped Nina and then felt used. Nina loved Rachel, but hated feeling like her sister saw her as a responsibility. When Caleb appeared, Nina was relieved that Rachel had someone, but worried because he had moved in too fast. One afternoon, Nina stopped by Rachel's apartment to return a box of toys her son had left behind. Rachel was asleep after a night shift. Nina used the spare key and stepped inside quietly, only to find Caleb sitting at the kitchen table with Rachel's laptop open in front of him, Rachel's phone beside it, the screen lit with her email inbox. Caleb looked up, not startled too much, but Nina caught one tiny pause before his smile returned. Nina, Rachel's asleep. I'm downloading house documents. She told me to use her computer because the realtor sent the file to her email. Nina set down the toy box. She told you to use her laptop? Yeah. He closed the laptop slowly, firmly. I didn't want to wake her. Nina stared at him. That's thoughtful. Caleb smiled sadly. I know you don't like me. I don't know you. Exactly. He stood, keeping his distance. I understand. Rachel has been the one carrying a lot for you and your family. If I were someone new coming in, I'd probably be afraid I was taking away my safety net too. The sentence was spoken softly, but Nina flushed immediately because it touched the part of herself she was most ashamed of. You don't know anything about us. I know Rachel is tired, Caleb said, and I know she doesn't need one more person making her feel guilty for wanting to be happy. When Nina told Rachel, Rachel did not hear warning. She heard a jab at an old tension. You came into my house while I was sleeping and interrogated my boyfriend. I saw him using your computer, because I let him. Are you sure? Rachel snapped. Nina, you don't like Caleb because you're afraid I won't be the first person you call when you need money anymore. As soon as she said it, both of them went silent. Nina went pale. Do you really think that? Rachel wanted to take it back, but Caleb had already planted himself behind her in her mind, with that sad voice saying your family is afraid of losing you. So she did not take it back. Nina left, closing the door very softly. Caleb held Rachel afterward and did not say anything bad about Nina. I'm sorry I'm the reason things are tense with your sister, he said. Rachel leaned into him, tired and angry and sad, not seeing that Caleb did not need to split them apart with a big fight. He only needed to place the right sentence inside a crack that was already there and watch. Passwords were not taken with a question. They leaked through intimacy. Caleb learned Rachel's security answers during harmless evening. The name of her old dog was Daisy, a story she told while they were looking through old photos on her phone. Her high school, where she had worked in the cafeteria to afford a discount prom dress. Her mother's birthday, visible in an old memorial photo Nina had sent in the family group chat. He knew her banking rhythm. She usually logged in after night shifts, around 8 in the morning, moved money into Future Kitchen, then closed the app. He knew she used a variation of the same password for her school portal and backup email, because once she muttered under her breath while struggling to remember one, and he joked, "You even have a system for how you forget things." He did not ask for verification codes. He created situations. His phone died right when he needed to open an email from the realtor, so he borrowed hers. The bank sent a joint account confirmation code to her phone while they sat side by side, his hand resting on her knee as he said, "Read it to me. I'm entering it now." He suggested installing a couple's budgeting app so they could track house expenses, then asked a few questions about how she grouped her accounts. Once, when she felt uneasy because he was standing too close while she paid bills, he stepped back immediately. "Sorry, I don't want you to feel watched." The fact that he stepped back made her feel unreasonable, so the next time she did not step away. Each individual moment was small, explainable by love, planning, exhaustion. Put together, they were the map of a robbery drawn in warm gestures. The fake house in Mesa was where Rachel almost believed her life had finally changed color. Caleb took her there on a Sunday afternoon, saying a secondary realtor had an off-market property. A little high in price, but negotiable if they could prove they had deposit money quickly. The house was small, cream stucco walls, an old tile roof, a backyard with a lemon tree that was not large but real, thick green leaves under the Arizona sun. The kitchen was old, the laminate counter worn, the cabinets in need of paint, but there was a window over the sink looking out to the backyard, light falling in exactly the place Rachel had imagined when she first wrote Future Kitchen 8 years earlier. She stood there, one hand on the edge of the sink, and tears rose so quickly she had to laugh to hide them. "You okay?" Caleb asked behind her. She nodded. "It's just, there's light." He stepped closer, placed a hand on her waist, rested his chin lightly on her shoulder. "This is where we start." He filmed her smiling, saying they would want to remember the first time they saw the house. Rachel did not know that the house was real, but the opportunity was fake. The owner did not know them. The secondary realtor did not exist in the way Caleb claimed. The deposit email came from a domain that was off by one letter, close enough to the real realty company that a sleep-deprived Rachel would not notice. Caleb did not need to build an entire fake world. He only needed to borrow a real house, a real lemon tree, a real window, and place a good enough lie over it. That night, he suggested moving more money into the joint account to hold the opportunity before someone else made an offer. Rachel sat at the kitchen table in her rented apartment, looked at the Future Kitchen notebook, and transferred $52,000. She did not transfer everything. She kept part of it in her own account. Caleb did not object. He kissed her forehead and said, "I know you need to feel like you still have control. I respect that." She heard it as love. Later, she would understand he was simply letting her keep enough for him to take the rest through the next step. The final evening before Caleb disappeared was normal in the cruelest way. That was what Rachel hated most when she remembered it. No fight, no major sign. He made an early dinner because she had to be at work by 9. Pan-seared chicken, rice, vegetables. He packed leftovers in the fridge and taped a note on the container. "One more hard week, then our life starts." Rachel read it while pinning her hotel name tag to her uniform and smiled to herself. Caleb stood in the bedroom doorway, watching her. "You're beautiful when you're tired," he said. She threw a sock at him. "That's not a compliment. It's the truth." He stepped closer and adjusted the collar of her blazer, a gesture so small and familiar. Sleep after your shift. Don't study right away. I'll handle the paperwork in the morning. You keep talking like I can't handle things myself. You can. I just don't want you to have to do everything alone. That sentence, for the last time, still softened her. At the hotel that night, Rachel handled a passenger furious about lost luggage, a married couple arguing over a reservation, a housekeeping employee asking to leave early because her child had a fever. At 5:12 a.m., a Mrs. Alvarez's doorbell camera across the hall recorded Caleb leaving Rachel's apartment with a black suitcase, a cardboard box, Rachel's laptop bag, and a baseball cap pulled low. He did not hurry. He locked the door, checked the handle, looked once down the hallway, and left. While Rachel was still at the hotel printing an invoice for a business traveler and saying, "Have a safe flight," Caleb had already sent the wire transfer, withdrawn cash, changed phones, and turned her future into a sequence of valid transactions. After the money vanished, Rachel called the bank before she called the police, because some part of her still believed that a system somewhere would understand this could not be real. She sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, phone on speaker, throat dry, listening to hold music repeat until she wanted to smash the phone against the wall. The first person transferred her to fraud. The second asked whether she had confirmed the transactions with codes sent to her phone. The third said the joint account had legitimate access from both account holders, and the wire had been authenticated through login information, security code, and verification question. "But I didn't make it," Rachel said, her voice breaking. "I was asleep. I understand, Miss Monroe will open an investigation, but at this time, the transactions are not displaying as unauthorized access in the system." Unauthorized access. The phrase made her feel as if she were being forced to prove her own house had been robbed, even though the door had been opened with a key she once gave out of trust. The first police officer who came to the apartment was young, polite, and slightly awkward as he listened. "He was your boyfriend? Yes. You had a joint account? Yes, but he lived here. He had access to your devices." Each question felt like a small hammer striking her shame. She wanted to scream that being manipulated was not the same as consenting, that a joint account was not permission to drain everything, that loving someone did not turn theft into a civil dispute. But she heard herself answer in fragments, weakly, like someone not yet certain she had the right to call this a crime. After the officer left and said it might need to be referred to financial crimes if there was clear evidence of fraud, Rachel stood in the apartment. Empty drawer, missing charger, missing laptop, Caleb's glass still in the sink, the food he had left in the fridge, the hoodie on the chair, rent due in 6 days, online tuition for the next term unpaid. The landlord had just emailed about renewing the lease with a $150 increase. Rachel opened the refrigerator, saw the chicken and rice container with the note, "Our life starts," and vomited into the sink. Her body could not tell the difference between losing money and losing a person. Both were a hollow space that smelled like dried coffee and cold food. The first narrative Rachel received from the world was that she had given the money willingly. A coworker at the hotel, though genuinely sorry for her, still blurted, "Why did you let him know your accounts?" Another said, "At least you weren't married. Divorce would be worse." The young officer used the phrase "possible civil dispute" before referring the case onward. Bank employees said "authorized access." So many times Rachel began hearing it as judgment. Nina came to the apartment, saw her sister sitting on the floor amid papers, face bloodless, and hugged her immediately. But Nina's eyes held pain and anger too. "I told you," Nina blurted, then immediately bit her lip because she knew the words helped no one. Rachel looked at her. "Don't," Nina knelt beside her. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Don't say I'm stupid. I'm not saying that. Everyone is saying it. They're just using different words." Maya arrived later with coffee, a power bank, a stack of empty folders, and a red pen. She listened to Rachel without interrupting, without asking, "Why would you?" When Rachel finally fell silent, Maya said, "Being manipulated isn't the same as volunteering. But if you want to prove that, you need a timeline." Rachel gave a small, warped laugh. "I lost my money, my house, and my boyfriend. Now I need a spreadsheet?" Maya looked at her. "Yes, because he wins if all of this stays pain. Pain won't make the bank change its mind. Pain won't make the police see a pattern. Evidence might." Rachel looked at the papers. She had studied accounting to change her life. Now she would have to use that same skill to record how her life had been stolen. Detective Harris appeared 2 days later, promising nothing. And that was exactly why Rachel trusted him more than the people who said everything would be okay. He was in his 50s, close-cropped salt and pepper hair, a dry voice, wearing a pale blue shirt and carrying a thin file. "Financial romance fraud is hard," he said in Rachel's apartment, sitting at the kitchen table where Caleb had once studied with her. "I'm not going to tell you we'll definitely get the money back. Most of it went through a joint account and was authenticated. But if there's planned fraud, false identity, shell businesses, a pattern with other victims, then we have a path." Rachel nodded, her throat tight. "I need you to tell me slowly. Don't leave out details because they embarrass you. The things you think make you look stupid may be the things that prove he had a method." That sentence opened a small way forward. Rachel began. Caleb at the hotel, the protein bar, the story about the partner, the joint account, the trial transactions, the house in Mesa, the laptop, Nina seeing him use it, Maya's warning. Detective Harris took notes without commentary. Maya sat beside Rachel, occasionally handing her a page when she forgot a date. Nina remembered the plate number of a rental car Caleb had driven months earlier, because it had blocked her from getting her son into the car, and she had taken a photo to complain to Rachel. Mrs. Alvarez came up when Rachel mentioned that her neighbor had a doorbell camera. "I thought it only showed the hallway," Rachel said. Harris looked up. "Don't assume. Ask Mrs. Alvarez." Lived across from Rachel, 70 years old, silver hair pinned in a low bun, with eyes that missed very little, though she pretended she only cared about the plants outside her door. When Rachel knocked, she opened immediately as if she had been waiting. "Mija, I saw the police come. Something happened with Caleb, didn't it?" Rachel almost cried at the way she said Caleb's name, as if he were real. She showed the footage. Caleb leaving at 5:12. A suitcase, box, laptop, low cap. "I thought it was strange because he didn't say hello like he usually did," Mrs. Alvarez said. "He was always too sweet. When a man too sweet suddenly goes quiet, I remember." The camera did not return the money, but it returned a piece of truth. He had not vanished like a man in panic. He had left like a man who had packed. The small pieces slowly took shape. The house email domain was off by one letter, using RN to resemble an M in the real company name. The LLC that received the money had been formed 3 months earlier in Nevada, at a commercial mailbox address. The phone number Caleb used to communicate with the realtor was prepaid, purchased in cash at a convenience store. The old address he had once written on a form did not exist, only an empty lot outside Reno. A bank employee remembered Caleb because he was very polite and asked detailed questions about wire transfer limits for their house account, asking how online authentication worked if one account holder worked nights and could not come in person. The trial transactions were not house fees. They went into the same network of accounts tied to the LLC, each one like a fingertip touching water to test its depth before the whole body jumped in. Each discovery hurt Rachel differently. At first, she hurt because she had lost money, then because she had been deceived, then more deeply because she understood he had spent months beside her, not only pretending to love her, but studying her. He had learned her like a ledger, her sleep habits, her work hours, her security answers, the way she softened when praised for discipline, the way she felt ashamed when told she did not know how to accept help. He had not left because he panicked. He had been practicing how to disappear from the moment he sat beside her talking about the future kitchen. Lena Brooks was the woman who turned Rachel's case from one humiliating private story into a pattern. Detective Harris found traces of a similar case in Reno 3 years earlier, one that had never been prosecuted fully because the victim withdrew after her family and local police made her feel like a woman abandoned by a lover, rather than a woman who had been defrauded. The man then had used the name Cal Martin. The appearance matched, the story matched. Old business partner betrayed him, wanted to buy a house, joint account, disappeared overnight. At first, Lena did not want to talk. "I lost $38,000 and spent 3 years trying to forget how stupid I was," she said over the phone, her voice tired. Rachel stood in the hotel parking lot, listened, and said slowly, "I don't think you were stupid. If I think that, then I have to think I'm stupid too. And I can't live if that's the only conclusion." Lena was silent for a long time. They met at a diner halfway between them, under blue and red neon lights, over bitter coffee, on vinyl seats cracked along the edges. Lena was in her 30s, blonde hair cut short, eyes that looked as if they had learned not to trust apologies. She brought an old folder, a photo of Cal, emails, a handwritten note he had left behind. "You won't understand now. I'm sorry," Rachel placed Caleb's final text beside it. Please don't try to understand this. The two sentences were not identical, but they carried the same voice, the same false mercy, the same way of turning the victim into someone incapable of understanding the pain of the thief. Lena looked at the sentence, lips pressed together. He used a house with me too, she said. A place in Sparks. It had a kitchen window. I stood there and said I wanted to grow mint. Rachel closed her eyes. The lemon tree in Mesa rose in her mind. Two women sat across from each other amid the smell of frying oil and cheap coffee, placing two dreams used as bait on the table between them. Lena said she had stayed silent because of shame, because her brother asked why she had not known better, because her mother said, a man that good-looking paying attention to you should have made you suspicious, because the police asked whether he had permission to use the account. Rachel held the coffee cup with both hands. I wanted to stay silent too, she said. I wanted to disappear almost as much as he did. Lena looked at her. So why didn't you? Rachel thought of the future kitchen notebook, of Maya, Nina, Mrs. Alvarez, of Caleb possibly sitting in another kitchen, telling another woman she did not have to carry everything alone. Because he's counting on that. Caleb was hunting someone new under the name Evan Cole. Tara Whitman, the owner of a small hair salon in Henderson, Nevada, had posted a photo on social media. She and a man standing outside a coworking office, him in a pale blue shirt, his hand resting lightly behind her back, the same slanted smile Rachel had once seen reflected in the bank window. The caption read, "Big things coming, grateful for someone who believes in rebuilding." Rachel stared at the photo until her stomach cramped. Maya sat beside her in silence. Lena sent a message. That's him. Detective Harris warned Rachel not to rush over. If you confront him before we have enough, he'll disappear. Men like this live by pulling victims into emotion and then using that emotion as smoke. Rachel wanted to scream that her emotions were not smoke. They were everything left after the money was gone. But she understood. They had to build by sequence. Lena gave her statement. Maya organized the timeline. The bank flagged the receiving accounts. Harris coordinated with Nevada police. Tyra was approached quietly. At first, she did not believe it. Then she trembled when she was shown photos of Caleb, Cal, and Evan from 3 different files. He said he was betrayed by a partner. Tyra whispered in a call with Harris that Rachel was later allowed to hear. He said I was the first person who made him believe again. Rachel had to put the phone down, not because she was jealous, because that sentence had once belonged to her. Caleb called from an unknown number before the coworking meeting took place. Rachel was in the hotel break room, uniform wrinkled, eyes shadowed. Her shift still not over, though she no longer knew tiredness in the old way. Detective Harris had instructed her that if Caleb called, she should keep him on the line, avoid baiting him into illegal traps, and record according to Arizona law after he explained it clearly. Rachel answered, silence for 2 seconds. Then his voice, Ratch. Her body reacted before reason could. Heart pounding, hands cold. That voice was still the voice that had once told her she was beautiful when she was tired. The voice that had read house listings with her. The voice that knew where she kept her tea. What do you want? She asked. Caleb exhaled, sounding genuinely exhausted. I know you hate me. Hate is too small a word. I owe dangerous people. I didn't have a choice. Rachel stared at the break room wall, at the shift calendar, and the paper reminding staff not to leave food in the fridge longer than 3 days. Ordinary things made the call even more absurd. You took $74 because you owed dangerous people. I was going to pay it back. I just needed time. If I told you, you would have tried to stop me, and they would have come after you. I did it to protect you. She closed her eyes. Protect. The word was filthy in his mouth. You took a cash advance on my credit card to protect me. I panicked. You created an LLC 3 months ago because you panicked. Silence. Very small, but there. You're listening to other people talk about me. I'm looking at paperwork. Caleb shifted his tone, softer. You know the real me. You saw me when I had nothing. You know I'm not a monster. Rachel felt tears rise, not because she believed him, but because some part of her still remembered the man in the kitchen. A man who might not have existed, but the feeling had existed inside her. I know the version you perform best, she said. Caleb's breathing sharpened. Ratch, don't do this. You don't understand what you're getting into. You're right about one thing, she replied. I tried to understand you for too long. Now I only need to understand where the money went. He swore under his breath, the first crack in the softness. Then he hung up. The recording did not contain a perfect confession, but it confirmed he knew about the money, the LLC, that she was tracing him, and that he was using another identity. Harris called it useful. Rachel called it the last time she heard his voice without being pulled back in. Before the Nevada operation, Detective Harris took Rachel to meet the prosecutor coordinating the case, a woman named Angela Pierce, in an office that looked nothing like a movie. Gray carpet, white light, a printer rattling in the corner, file boxes stacked against the wall. Angela did not say much about justice in beautiful terms. She opened a flowchart on the screen and used the cursor to point to each arrow. The money from your joint account went by wire transfer to Desert Meridian Consulting, LLC in Nevada. From there, it split 3 ways. Part was withdrawn in cash at ATMs and teller windows. Part moved into an account in Utah under another newly formed LLC. Part was used to pay down cards and buy prepaid phones. With multiple states involved, we have to coordinate between Arizona, Nevada, and possibly federal authorities if we have enough wire fraud elements through interstate system. The charges under review include fraudulent schemes, theft by deception, identity theft if we can prove your personal information was used without real consent, forgery tied to the fake house documents, and wire fraud if the case moves federally. Rachel looked at the arrows and saw that her $74 was no longer money. It was an animal cut into pieces. "Will I get it back?" she asked, though she already knew. Angela paused just long enough to be kind. "We'll try to freeze what remains, but you need to prepare yourself for the fact that restitution on paper and actual money coming back are 2 different things." Detective Harris sat beside her and added, "The important thing now is keeping him from the next person and proving this isn't a relationship dispute. This is an interstate pattern, multiple identities, multiple victims, shell businesses, intentional transfers." Rachel looked at the diagram for a long time. Pain when drawn as arrows seemed neater, but it was still her life, dragged through accounts like something with no blood. The payoff happened inside a carking office in Henderson, Nevada, where everything was designed to look like the future. Glass walls, glossy fake plants, camel-colored chairs, clean whiteboards, the smell of roasted coffee and new air conditioning. Caleb, under the name Evan Cole, was preparing to meet Tara to sign paperwork for an investment expansion of her hair salon. Using the same transfer structure Harris said was almost enough to intervene when placed beside Rachel and Lena's file. Rachel did not storm in alone. She stood in the hallway with Maya, Lena, and 2 Nevada officers, Detective Harris beside her, his face serious. Through the glass wall, she saw Caleb sitting at the table, clean shirt, hand resting on the folder, smile opened just enough. Tara sat across from him, pale but trying to stay steady according to the plan. Caleb leaned in, said something. His hand gestures slow, warm, familiar enough that Rachel felt her knees weaken. Lena stood beside her and whispered, "He tilts his head like that when he talks about the future." Rachel did not answer. She looked at the man who had slept beside her, who had known where she kept her tea, who had filmed her in the Mesa kitchen, and realized something terrifying. If she had not known, if she had not been robbed, she might still have believed him. He did not look like a monster. He looked like a man who would carry your bag to the car. When the police entered, Caleb did not stand too quickly. He looked at Tara first, as if worried for her. "What's going on?" he asked, calm, faintly confused. "This must be a misunderstanding." He used the exact face he had used with Rachel when Maya warned her. The wrongly accused man, the man tired of being chased by his past. Then Lena walked in. His expression changed for less than a second, but Rachel saw it. Tara saw it. Harris saw it. Then Rachel entered last. Caleb looked at her, and for the first time in months, she saw he did not have a role ready immediately. Maybe because he had not expected the women he left in shame to be standing in the same hallway. Maybe because each of them held a different piece of his memory, a different version of a name, a different kitchen, a different account, and now those pieces had been placed beside each other to form the truth of him. "Rachel," he said very softly. She remembered every time that voice had softened her. This time it only touched the new scar. Detective Harris read his rights and spoke of fraud, identity theft, money moving through fake businesses, multi-state pattern. Caleb immediately returned to the civil dispute voice. "This is personal. Rachel and I had a joint account." "Lena, don't," Lena said, her voice shaking but clear. Tara pushed the folder away, as if it were hot. Maya stood behind Rachel, not touching her but there. Rachel did not yell. She had thought she would yell if she ever saw him again. Thought she would demand the money, demand an explanation, demand he tell her that some part of it had been real. But when the moment arrived, she only felt tired. A deep, dry tiredness that no longer wanted to beg the man who had studied her like a map. She looked at Caleb and said, "You didn't disappear. You just left enough footprints because you thought no one would be willing to follow them through the shame." Caleb looked at her. There was anger in his eyes, then something almost like contempt, as if he still resented her for breaking the silence victims were supposed to keep. "You won't get it back," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. The sentence should have broken her. It was partly true. She knew the money had passed through too many accounts, too many cash withdrawals. But Rachel looked at him in handcuffs, looked at Tara crying silently, looked at Lena standing straight though her face had gone pale, and replied, "But you won't get the next woman either." For the first time, he had no answer. After Caleb was taken away, Tara remained in the glass-walled room, both hands resting on the investment papers, as if letting go would make them transform into something else. She did not sob loudly. Tears only slid down her face, quiet and furious, smearing mascara beneath her eye. Rachel stood outside the door for a while, unsure whether she had the right to step into the pain of the woman who had almost become her. But Tara looked up first. "He told me I didn't have to start over alone anymore," she said, voice raw. "I believed him. I thought someone finally saw my salon not as some small, exhausted little shop, but as something that could become bigger." She pushed the papers farther away. "I had already picked the paint color for the second location." That hurt Rachel more than if Tara had cursed Caleb, because she understood. It was not only money. It was the paint color already chosen, the window already imagined, a future concrete enough to smell like new wall. Lena sat beside Tara and did not say, "At least you didn't sign," because that sentence was too cheap. Rachel stepped inside, pulled out a chair, and the three women sat around the fake paperwork in a room too clean for what had happened there, listening to the air conditioner blow evenly, each of them looking at a different version of herself that had either just escaped or already been dragged through fire. The aftermath was not whole, and that lack of wholeness was the cruelest truth of all. Caleb was arrested, then prosecuted on charges tied to financial fraud, identity theft, false identities, shell businesses, and defrauding multiple victims. Rachel's, Lena's, and Tara's files were combined. Some accounts were frozen. The bank returned a small portion after a long dispute process. But most of the money had been transferred, withdrawn in cash, used to pay debts, hidden or spent in ways legal systems describe as difficult to recover. Rachel got back less than a quarter. $74 did not return like it would in a movie. 8 years were not refunded. The Mesa house sold to someone else. The lemon tree stayed green in the backyard of a family who had no idea they were living inside a dream, once used to rob a woman. Rachel had to sell the old Toyota because the repairs were too expensive, and she needed cash. She moved into a cheaper apartment, farther from the hotel, with a window facing a parking lot and communal dumpsters, a louder air conditioner, a smaller kitchen, no beautiful light. She paused school for 1 term because she could not pay tuition on time. She picked up extra shifts, though her body was so tired that some mornings she had to pull over while driving home and cry, because she could not remember whether she had just run a red light. But she did not stay silent. That did not make her life easier, but it kept her from disappearing with the money. She testified with Lena and Tara. She sat in conference rooms with prosecutors, looked at photos of Caleb under different names, listened to lawyers talk about plea agreements, restitution, low recovery odds. She learned legal words cold as stone: asset tracing, wire fraud, identity theft, pattern evidence. Each word was a box holding one piece of her pain, so other people could touch it without being burned. Lena said after one meeting, "I still feel stupid." Rachel looked at her. "Me too." Tara, the woman who had almost lost her salon, said quietly, "I don't know whether to say thank you or I'm sorry." Maya answered for Rachel. "You don't have to apologize for being saved before you were pushed." Nina helped Rachel move, and the two sisters painted an old table in the new apartment. While they painted, Nina said, "I'm sorry I said I told you so that day." Rachel stopped the brush. "I'm sorry I thought you were only afraid of losing my money." The sisters did not hug right away. They kept painting, because sometimes a real apology does not need to be beautified by a grand scene. It only needs to stay in the room long enough not to be taken back. A year later, Rachel still had not bought a house. The future kitchen notebook remained, but the final page before Caleb was a wound. $73, $892. She did not tear it out, did not burn it. Sometimes she wanted to throw it away, because every line felt like mockery. But then she realized the notebook had not betrayed her. Caleb had. Those numbers were not stupid. They were proof she had once built. She lived in a smaller apartment, took the bus, and sometimes borrowed Nina's car when she needed to. Worked in the hotel's accounting department after completing part of her program through tuition deferments and repeating classes more slowly. She was no longer in the night shift lobby as much, but sometimes she still walked through it and saw the old version of herself standing behind the desk, red-eyed, smiling at drunk guests, unaware that at home a man was learning his way into her accounts. Maya came for dinner on Fridays with salad and cheap wine. Nina brought her son over, and he drew pictures on the floor. Mrs. Alvarez sent a small plant when Rachel moved, saying, "It isn't a lemon tree, but this one survives." Rachel placed it by the window overlooking the parking lot. It was not beautiful, it lived. The letter from the prosecutor's office arrived on a hot afternoon. White envelope, black print. Caleb had accepted a plea agreement for multiple cases, including hers and Lena's. Restitution was mentioned, but the prosecutor had already warned her not to build a future on that money. Rachel read the letter at her new kitchen table, the old table repainted with slightly uneven edges because Nina had rushed. The light from the window not beautiful but enough. She read down to the name Caleb Foster, noted as one of several aliases, then folded the letter. She did not cry, not because the pain was gone, because tears were no longer the first thing her body did when his name appeared. She opened the future kitchen notebook. For a long time, she only stared at the blank page. Then she picked up a pen and wrote the first line of a new chapter. Not gone. Rebuilt. The sentence did not make her lighter. It did not return $74,000. It did not return 8 years of night shifts. It did not return the Mesa house, the lemon tree, the kitchen window, or the version of Rachel who once believed love could be a joint account if both people signed with warm hands beneath the bank desk. There were things Caleb had taken that no system could fully restore. He took the ease she once had when opening a laptop in front of someone else. He took the feeling of safety when a man said, "Let me help." He took her ability to walk into a bank without her throat tightening. But he did not take her name from the story. That was what he had miscalculated. He thought shame would lock her mouth the way it had locked Lena's for a time, the way it almost locked Tyra's before anything happened. He thought women would hate themselves enough that all he had to do was vanish. Rachel set the pen down and looked at the stubborn little plant in the window. Outside, the parking lot heated under the Phoenix sun, unfamiliar cars came and went. Other people still pulled suitcases through one another's lives, and the world remained as indifferent as it had always been. Rachel was not healed. She was simply still there, poorer, more cautious, sadder, but not empty. Caleb had once vanished with her money, but he could not vanish from the truth she forced the world to see.